model. Carolyn McGavick has taught ESL in a variety of contexts over the last 25 years, and she's currently teaching advanced vocational ESL in an IBEST model for automotive technology with instructor Frank Vasquez. Frank has been teaching automotive technology at Miramar College and San Diego Continuing Education for 30 years. He's been co-teaching with Carolyn for 3 years. So they're from San Diego Community College District Continuing Education, non-credit education. And I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn and Frank right now.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for attending our presentation today. I'm going to be focusing not on IET in general, but instead just describing like one specific example of how Frank and I are working together. So in this slide here, you can see Frank and I, that's our selfie down below. And we encourage the students to take lots of pictures during class. So the two background slides were created by one of our students, and I put them in there because I thought it was a fun way to introduce our roles. So he's describing, Frank is the teacher who's showing them how to do valve clearance, and I'm the instructor that's showing them how to add up measurements on the crankshaft and explain the meaning of the words. I thought the student did a good job summarizing our two roles. I want to talk a little bit about the planning behind our partnership. My understanding is that the auto tech department was noticing a pattern of students with low basic skills having also low persistence in the program. And so the dean reached out, the dean of auto tech and heavy vocational programs reached out to the ESL dean and kind of thought about how they could bring in some basic skills support for the students that are English language learners and also students who had been out of school for a long time. I'd like to give credit to that Dean, Jane Signigo-Cox, for her planning process because she reached out to a lot of people in different directions. She brought in program chairs. She brought in retired instructors to give her advice about, who she thought would be the best faculty members to work in a collaborative fashion and to help with curriculum development. She reached out to a group called New Horizons on campus that provides services such as textbook loans and transportation help. Worked with our Student Services Office to come up with assessments and orientation to identify our target students. She worked with the counselors to adapt our orientation process and also had a grant coordinator involved finding grant money that supported the development of the course. And I just like to put that message out there because it's a complex process, beyond the faculty members themselves to pull together this type of, interdepartmental collaboration. And I thought that their work process worked well. So the result of all of those parties putting their heads together was the development of an introductory program. In this visual here, you can see there are 3 courses in blue that describe the program, the existing program, and they developed in green a pre-introductory program that students are placed in if they demonstrate lower reading or math scores on an assessment in orientation. And that's the program that Frank and I teach. It's composed of 3 courses that result in the program completion, and the instruction is designed to give students the background knowledge and the study skills and the learning community that will help them to be successful in the core program afterwards. So it's not an accelerating model in the sense that the students have an additional 13 weeks of instruction, but we have found that the students are really thankful for having had the opportunity to do the introductory course once they enter the other courses. They're giving us that feedback. I'm going to stop for a moment because I'm seeing some notes about my audio. Let me just take a moment and get some feedback. Do I need to turn my volume down, or are you getting feedback? Nothing?
Just try not to move your head. It's probably just you're moving a little bit.
Okay, all right. I'll try to sit very still. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, so go ahead.
All right, so this is what our daily schedule looks like. I open the class at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I provide some sort of auto tech lesson that draws on developing, could be terminology, could be reading. I spend a lot of time on reading diagrams and graphs and charts, or applying basic math in the context of an engine measurement, for example. And then Frank joins us at 10:30, and we're with the students together for an hour. And then he continues the class until 1:45 on his own. So, for example, I might start with a set of tools in the classroom. In this picture, students are learning the names of the items in the tool set, and they're also being introduced to inch measurements. And the socket sizes are in increments of a 1/16 of an inch. So we're looking at, why would the 3/8 inch socket be next to 5/16, for example? So that leads into about 4 lessons of learning the names of the items in the toolbox, and then also being introduced to 1/16 of an inch. That same day, students go with Frank to disassemble an engine or remove accessory pieces from the engine using the tools that they learned about in the morning. Or it may be that I observe students working with Frank. Here they're using a straight edge and a feeler gauge to determine if there is warping in the block. And I can listen to the language that Frank is using and the language that students are using, and then I can follow his lesson. For example, in this case, they're using a feeler gauge that measures thousandths of an inch in decimals. The students were struggling with reading those numbers, so I practiced how to pronounce the numbers on the gauges. So those are just some examples about how we're able to really tightly coordinate our instruction by having that overlap time to see what each of us is doing. We incorporate writing by having students create Google Slides about what Frank has demonstrated. So we encourage them to take pictures and then have them write about the part and what its function is. And then they get to present their slides to Frank. So they have to listen about the parts, write about the parts, and speak about the parts. So we've had several positive outcomes from our collaboration. The other instructors who receive our students have said that they really observed increased confidence and greater persistence. And one of the most valuable things, I think, is that students have a learning community in their future classes. We do a lot of group work, and we pace our instruction to leave lots of room for asking questions. and encourage students to do their homework assignments together and even do some of the book work in the classroom, so they develop study partners. When they go on to the other classes, they're expected to do all their book work independently, and I think that those relationships and developing study buddies helps a lot. We've witnessed an increased number of course and program completions. So for example, in the last 2 years, 40% of the students that completed the core program took the introductory class, although only about 25% of the students actually get to take the introductory class. And another benefit of having me as an ESL instructor working with Frank in Auto Tech is that all the other ESL instructors are learning about the CTE program by asking me, oh, well, what are the hours and where is that program? Since we have 7 campuses, I feel like I've become kind of a liaison and for other instructors to be able to refer their students to Auto Tech and know that there's someone that they're familiar with there to greet and incorporate their students. Some of the challenges are forming a cohesive cohort of students for this introductory class. Students have mixed needs. Some are experienced with the mechanics but are learning the English vocabulary to describe what they're doing. Others are brand new to working with the car. Others are experienced mechanics, but they've been at a school for a very long time and are struggling with getting certification. So it's a real interesting mix of students. We're using alternative assessments such as like the Google Slides projects that I mentioned, but they will have to take multiple choice tests to get certified. So I also incorporate a lot of multiple choice question type work. Finding the right instructor to fit the hours and the kind of flexibility that's required can be a challenge. I think Frank and I just got real lucky that he's super flexible and I'm super curious. And so I've had fun learning about his field, and he's just been a really great mentor. Funding the co-teaching model is always a question that comes up, and we are currently exploring alternative ways to fund our model. Because we have that 1 hour overlap, the ESL department is taking a loss, and that makes it really hard to sustain. So we're actively thinking about what are the different ways that we could do this, and also looking at strong workforce program funds to support it so that we can make it sustainable. And finally, I just want to mention data collection. We were able to go back into attendance and certification records over the last couple of years to gauge whether or not we were being successful. But I have to admit that at the start, we did not have a plan for how that was going to be done or who would be responsible for doing that. So I just want to say word to the wise, when you start your IET program, decide what data you want to collect to determine the success of your program or to measure the success. And how is that going to be done, and who would be responsible for that? Future possibilities in our program might be that we would transition to an ABE instructor instead of an ESL instructor. We have a mixed demographic, and so we're constantly having dialogue about, should it be ESL, should it be ABE? That's a question that might come up in your agency. Now that I have become familiar with the Auto Tech curriculum, we may move from co-teaching to alternative teaching. Alternative teaching would not have the hour of overlap, and it's less expensive. However, we've gotten such great feedback from students that our agency is definitely looking at expanding basic skills offerings to other vocational areas. So as we speak, we're looking at how we might be able to do something similar with welding and HVAC, for example. So I want to give Frank some time to jump in here so that you can hear his point of view and his experience with our partnership. So Frank, I just want to start by asking you, how did you feel about being asked to team teach with an English teacher?
I was really excited about it. It was an opportunity. Back in the 80s, I did work with some refugees that came from Vietnam, and it was really interesting. It really piqued my interest. So when the opportunity came up, I was really excited about it. And like Carolyn was saying, it just happened to be a real good group that we got together.
Okay, so Frank, how does being a team teacher affect your instruction? Are there challenges?
At the beginning, maybe a little bit, trying to get to know each other. But if you are lucky, like we were, I got someone that was really enthusiastic and really wanted to be part of the class. I think that's really important. So you have to pick someone that is willing to learn. You have to stop and think. This is an entry-level class. So like Carolyn said, she came along and learned as we went along. And every class that we had, she got better and better and better. I made a comment the other day that for some reason I didn't show up a day, she could take over and run the class. So, yeah, it's been good.
What advantages do you see for the students in our team teaching approach?
Well, it really helps because we have so much information that we have to get out with the vehicles. This day and age are a little bit more complex than they were 30, 40 years ago. So like Carolyn was saying, we have a different range of students, and when they come in and they go through her class, then it takes, well, it makes my time out in the lab a little more productive because they've already been exposed to some of the wording and the talk, and it, at the same time, brings up a lot of questions. Very important in the learning environment.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've noticed. Frank is very flexible. I would say that that's a very important quality because he'll walk in the room and I'll have my list of Frank questions on the board. And so he's got to be, you know, ready to come in and meet the students where they're at, regardless of what he had planned. He's always ready to meet us wherever our discussion has taken us. Frank, is there any advice that you would give to a CT instructor who's planning to team teach with a basic skills instructor?
I can't think of too many. The only one I can think of is just be patient and, you know, make sure that the students realize that they're important and what they're teaching them is actually going to be practical, so we can use it out in the shop. And I think once they start to see that, then they start to really appreciate the class that Carolyn teaches.
Yeah, thank you. That's something I've really appreciated, is that although I'm also a learner in the content, Frank is very supportive of the material that I'm teaching in terms of emphasizing the value of the study skills, the value of learning to talk like a tech, that sort of thing, really keeps us together as a group. So I wanted to stop here and see if anyone wanted to write in a question. I'm just going to watch the chat box in case anybody wanted to ask something specific for Frank or myself.
While you're thinking and writing, I'll just say we are going to have a few minutes at the end for questions, so we'll hear from about both programs, and then we'll have a chance for questions. So think about your questions if you don't have them right now. But it looks like Susan said, what does a lesson planning session look like when you're co-teaching?
What does a lesson planning session look like? Well, in our case, it's me hovering around Frank in his office saying, what are you going to teach tomorrow? And do you think this would be valuable, or do you think that would be valuable? And he would sort of guide me along that way. I started out using the Autotech textbook, and I started with a practical problems in mathematics book for Autotechs, and I would show him things from the book that I thought would be relevant, and he would guide me in what he thought was most valuable. So we were sort of informal, I think, but definitely did a lot of back and forth each day in the beginning. Now we're kind of cruising. So,
so let's hang on to the other questions, Laura, Tischel, and Sigrid, and hear from Jennifer Bedone, and then we'll come back and I'll keep track of these, and we'll try to cover these when we get to the end, because I know they're good questions, and I'm sure you'll have other ones as well. So thank you so much, Frank and Carolyn. It was great to hear the team perspective on the IBEST model. So now we're going to switch over to Jennifer Bedone. She has taught ESL for nearly 15 years. She's from Los Angeles Unified School District Division of Adult and Career Education, and she's currently the Integrated Education and Training IET Teacher Advisor for LAUSD. She's responsible for working with the division schools to plan and implement IET programs, including supporting teachers and co-planning and co-teaching strategies. So I'm sure she'll have more to say about co-planning and co-teaching. So Jennifer.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here with you and to be able to share about these two programs that I'm going to talk about. The two programs I'm going to talk about are located at the East Los Angeles Skills Center, and they're part of LAUSD's Division of Adult and Career Education. We have 11 main campuses and multiple branch sites. So at the East LA Skills Center, I worked there for 3 years as their ESL teacher advisor. So this is kind of like a second home to me. So what I'd like to tell you about are two different IET models. They are alternating teacher models. So the East LA Skills Center offers multiple pathways, but the alternating teacher models are for the pre-CNA pathway and for the photovoltaic class. So the alternating teacher model doesn't have two teachers in the same room at the same time, like Carolyn and Frank do. Students take first one class and then take the second class, the second related class. But that doesn't mean that the teachers don't collaborate. They do collaborate, but they each do have their own curriculum that they work out of. So the first pathway is a photovoltaic pathway. And this one is offered in collaboration with Homeboy Industries. Homeboy Industries is a community-based organization that supports ex-gang members and previously incarcerated men and women. It was founded by Father Greg Boyle in the East Los Angeles community. Homeboy Industries covers the tuition and the supply costs for homeboy clients that want to enroll in the photovoltaic training program at the East LA Skills Center. The solar panel instructor and staff work really hard to cultivate a network of photovoltaic firms that consider the graduates as soon as they're done and hire them. The program has been providing training and jobs in the renewable energy field for over 6 years, so it's a pretty well-established program. As the field grows in renewable energy, so does the program, and the biggest challenge they find is having enough students to fill all of the available jobs that are out there in the community. So the program itself is offered to the homeboys, but it's also offered to the public. The difference is that all of the homeboys are required to take the full IET program, which is different students that are coming from the public have the opportunity to take the TABE test, and they could possibly test out, which means they wouldn't have to take the math piece of the program. We don't do that with the homeboys. What they found is that asking homeboys to take an assessment before they enter the program really deters them from entering. They've had some, just because of their previous experiences with education, that having that big, heavy assessment up front was a real barrier to them. So what they decided to do was enroll the homeboys that are interested and then do the math assessment once they're already in the class to get an idea to just kind of gauge the needs of the students. But regardless, they all do take the math component. Those that test really high can go straight into the algebra component and don't necessarily have to do the basic math piece. So it's a 4-month training program, and it goes Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3:30. They do use the alternating teachers model. So the good part about this class, though, is that students get to stay in their same classroom, and the teachers rotate in and out. And when that happens, the teachers actually have a good-sized office at the back of the classroom. So when one teacher is teaching, the other teacher is still kind of within earshot and can hear and understand what's going on, so that if there are questions that arise on either side, when it's that next teacher's turn to jump in, they can address those questions. And that really helps facilitate their collaboration too. So the way that they do it is math is taught every day from 7:30 to 9:30. They have PV1 and math for photovoltaics, PV2 plus basic math for photovoltaics, and then the PV3 students take contextualized algebra. And so that math component in the morning really is kind of a multi-level piece, but the teacher will focus on one particular level at a time. So, for example, she does algebra. She'll do basic math Monday morning, 7:30 to 9:30, and then she'll teach algebra from 9:30 to 11:45. So they do kind of fluctuate, and then she'll stay there and alternate that the other days of the week to give the students some time. So originally they only started offering math for photovoltaic 1 and 2, but what they realized is that even though the students were able to earn certificates, they weren't taking or passing the NABCET, which is their industry standard exam. So when they looked at the results, they decided to add the contextualized algebra piece to the PV3 class. And now students have a 71% pass rate for the NABCET. So not only are they getting their certificates, they are getting that industry exam. So at the end of the program, trainees do receive 3 certificates, one for each of the photovoltaic programs. They've served close to 1,000 clients since they started. They have a 92% graduation rate and a 70% placement rate within 90 days of graduation. Those are some of the sort of, data-driven successes. But when I went in to visit them, I went in to see how she was working with the math students, and it was such a dynamic environment to see. So in the center of the classroom, the classroom was full of homeboy students, but there were 3 specific students from homeboys. They were very much ex-gang members, but they were sitting in the middle of that classroom having the most lively, dynamic discussion about subtracting fractions, which is something you just wouldn't see in any other situation. And so it really speaks to the value of contextualizing the math and really tying it into what people's goals are and drawing those 2 things together. Okay. So the next program that East LA Skills Center offers with an alternating teachers model is a pre-CNA pathway. So this pre-CNA pathway started in 2013, and it was originally funded by a grant, which was a private grant from the Walmart Foundation and the National Council of La Raza. When the grant was implemented, the grant covered all of the costs for the CNA training program, so the cost of the class and the textbooks. So they had really just tremendous numbers of people that wanted to come through this program. The way that they designed it is it combines ESL for health careers and then what we call health information technology or medical terminology. And then once students are able to complete that portion of it, then they're able to enter into the CNA course and the externship program. So this program has been in place since 2013, when that grant was originally written, and they've served about 200 students since then. The ESL program focuses heavily on vocabulary development and reading skills to prepare the students for the CNA course and ultimately for that state exam. And the instructor has really seen some fantastic improvements. She's had some really great results, improving students' reading scores. So this pathway, because the CNA class by itself is a full-day program, they decided to design the pre-CNA portion as an all-day program as well, to help students prepare for that longer day of school and work and the rigor of that. So the way that they do it is students have the option from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. to take a regular ESL class, part of the regular full ESL curriculum. And then from 10:15 to 12:15, they're required to take an ESL class in the full curriculum. Then after that, they'll go into their contextualized ESL for health careers. And then from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, they'll go into the health information technology or the medical terminology. So the teachers do collaborate for this class, but they are in separate, students go to separate classrooms. So a few of the requirements for this program, students need to be at an ESL level 3, and they have to have a TABE reading score of a 3.0, which generally would sound low for a CNA program, but because she works and focuses so heavily on their reading skills, they often see reading improvements of up to 3 levels while they're in this pre-CNA program. So they've had students come in at a 2.2 that they've taken and seen those students improve up to like a 6.4 reading level on the TABE. And then students that enter in already sort of at a 6.0 can have seen boosts to go up to like a 9.0 reading grade level. So in order to exit the program, they have a few requirements. The first one is that they have to pass the HIT-1 and medical terminology class. And then in addition to that, the ESL portion, that teacher determines whether they pass based on her own chapter assessments, her own ESL assessments, and then she looks at their attendance, and then they need a teacher recommendation. So she really tries to do kind of a holistic evaluation of what are the students, not just their reading skills, but what are their listening and speaking abilities like? Have they attended regularly? Are they able to enter into a full-day rigorous program and really stay committed to it? Students are allowed to repeat. They can stay in the ESL portion for 1 or 2 trimesters, and they can repeat the medical terminology class 1 time. So in 2014-2015, they had 81% of their students pass their board exam, and 63% were placed in jobs within 60 days. And then in 2015-16, they had 83% of their students pass board exams and an 87% placement rate also within 60 days. So they're really proud of this program. They're really proud of both programs. They've dedicated a lot of time and energy into them, and I think we're really seeing the results in terms of student job placement, which is what we always want at the end of an IET pathway. So I think it is time to see if we have any questions.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. It's great to hear about how these programs are actually going and what kind of results you're getting. While you're thinking about your questions for Jennifer and any other questions for Carolyn and Frank, let's go back to Laura's question. I think this is for Carolyn. I'm not sure if it applies to both. Do the students choose to be in the class, the basic skills class for automotive technology, or are they placed there by test scores? Carolyn, don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Marion. Yeah, I apologize. I was having trouble hearing the question that you said. I can't see it.
Again? So do the students that are placed in the basic skills class with you, do they choose to be there, or are they placed based on test scores?
Yes. Thank you. I remember that question now. When we started the program, we assigned students to the introductory class after assessments and orientation. But we found that students that were placed in other classes would sometimes ask if they could also join the introductory class. So we do have some students that choose to start in the intro class. And then we changed our orientation process where we added a little self-evaluation based on knowledge of automotive technology. So students may score high on the reading and the math test, but rate themselves as beginners as far as auto tech is concerned. Those students are also invited.
Thanks, Carolyn. I'm just going to remind you to, sorry.
I apologize for the audio issues. I'm I've been trying to correct it, but
it might be hitting a button or a necklace or an earring or something. So, but when you sit really still, we don't hear it. So, and let's switch back to Jennifer. Christine is asking you, do the students have a diploma or a GED prior to the program? Jennifer, don't forget to unmute.
Okay, there, I got it unmuted. So for the photovoltaic program, they do not, generally speaking, they do not come with a high school diploma or a GED. And for the CNA program, it's a mix. The ESL students generally don't have a high school diploma or a GED. They might have a high school diploma from their home country, and then the non-IET CNA students, they might have a high school diploma, but we also offer high set prep and GED classes for those students that want to do that, that want to get that at the same time or after they finish the CNA course.
Thanks. And Carolyn and Frank, would you consider, this is from Tisha, would you consider your students in your courses to be more ESL or more ABE? 50-50.
Well, that tends to vary by cohort. We have a new cohort of students every 13 weeks. I think generally speaking, about 20% of the students are what I would consider to be the type of English language learner that I would find in a low or high intermediate ESL class. And then maybe 60 to 70% of the students are individuals who maybe have spent most of their lives in the United States but speak a language other than English at home. So, you know, maybe about 90% of the students are bilingual. And then we do have a small percentage of native speakers in the class as well. So it's quite a blend.
Thanks. And from Sigrun, I think you already covered this, but could you say again how many days per week and how many hours per day the class meets? That's to Carolyn and Frank.
So the class meets 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday, from 9 a.m. to 1:45. So it's quite a few. It's a big commitment for the students.
And it's a semester. Is that it?
The course is actually about 13 weeks long. So it's interesting, our auto tech program doesn't follow the semester calendar. And there are 4 courses that the students rotate through. We all sort of rotate at the same time. So after 13 weeks, the introductory students go into brakes and alignment. And the students from brakes and alignment rotate to engine and electrical, etc.
Okay, Carolyn, let me just stay with you. And Susan is asking, you mentioned having the end goal in mind before you begin. Do you have any other suggestions besides, I think your suggestion was to plan your data collection, what those goals should be?
Right. Well, I think it depends on the need that you're identifying, among students. In our case, the need was for students to build some skills to have success within the training program. So our end goal was to increase persistence within the training program. However, another goal might be to have a higher number of students achieve employment at the end of the training goal. So I think it just depends on where you see the needs. Another goal might have been to increase ESL enrollment in job training. That wasn't our particular goal for this program, but we are looking at, for example, in our survey of ESL students, there's a high interest in small business, and yet we're seeing a small number of those students enroll in our small business planning program. So my goal for that program is to increase the number of English language learners that access the small business planning course that we offer. I hope those are just a few different ways of looking at it based on where you see the student needs.
Thanks. Thank you. And
Sure.
to Jennifer again, do employers in your area hire CNAs without their high school diploma GED, or are they required to take the program after the CNA portion?
Okay, so what happens is, so a high school diploma or a high school equivalency are not a requirement. They're not our requirement to enter our program, but students without the diploma are counseled before they enter that most of the CNA positions will require the diploma or the high school equivalency, at which point students are given the option to enter into a preparation program, either diploma or the high school equivalency prep classes. And then the student has the option to choose whether they want to do that before they go into the CNA or if that's something that they want to do on the back end. It's just not our requirement for the students to enter our program. But for a job, they are counseled that it is a requirement. But because it's not a requirement for a caregiver position, sometimes students will complete the CNA course and then take a position as a caregiver if they don't have their high school diploma yet.
That makes sense. Okay, so Christine is typing again, and for all of you 46 other people out there, now is your chance to ask some questions of these people who have a lot of experience with IET. We have a few more minutes. I'll just mention while you're thinking that the slides will be posted on the AEBG website under webinars along with the recording. So if you want to review something or if you want your colleagues to listen to any of this, the recording will be available. Also, when we close the meeting, an evaluation form will open up behind this window, not in this window. You might have to look around for it, but it will be there. And you will also receive a reminder tomorrow morning in case you don't fill it out right now. We really value your thoughts and your input about these webinars and what you found valuable and what you'd like to hear more about in the future. So I really encourage you to do that. So wow, it looks like there's no more questions. Any other questions for Carolyn, Frank, or Jennifer? Oh, there are a few people typing here. Laura, Dave. So we'll wait just a few minutes since we have a few minutes. So Jennifer, how did you identify the programs that you decided to focus on? Or not Jennifer, this is for everybody. How did you choose CNA or photovoltaic or automotive technology? So maybe start with Jennifer.
So I chose to focus on these programs because they were the longest established at the school and had, really strong track records. The East LA Skills Center is also piloting a few other programs. They're doing the Building and Grounds, doing an IET for Building and Grounds, and they are developing an IET for their cosmetology program. They're also looking to develop an IET for their security guard trainee program. So it's a model that they have had success with and are really interested in creating more and using more. But I really wanted to talk about those that are well established and had a good track record.
Jennifer, maybe you weren't around for the part where they actually decided to do the photovoltaic class, but do you know how was that originally started because of a grant program also? Some kind of a grant, or how did they originally decide we're going to do photovoltaic?
You know, what I wasn't around when that started, so I'm not 100% sure. I don't believe it was funded. If it was funded by a grant, the grant wasn't written by the East LA Skills Center, because the funding for that program comes from Homeboy Industries. What I imagine, and I don't know how the collaboration started between the school and Homeboy, but photovoltaic, Homeboy's goal is to help their population, re-enter the workforce and give them the skills in order to do that. And so I imagine that photovoltaic it's just a booming industry right now, and I'm sure that they chose a field that they offered at the school that really they were sure that their students would have jobs at the end.
Anna, thank you. Anna's saying that it was a partnership with Homeboy Industries and that the Skills Center met with Father Boyle. Great, thank you. And
thank you, Anna.
Carolyn, of all the CTE courses in your program, you decided to focus the IET on automotive technology. Do you know how that decision was made?
Honestly, I was not involved with the original decision making. I can say that it's one of the larger populations of students.
That makes sense.
And so they may have seen that there was room to incorporate this into the program.
And that kind of dovetails with Sigmund's comment that when they started their IET program, the hardest thing was attracting students, and that the amount of time expected to students to put into the program was turned out to be kind of a barrier. So they're reevaluating that now. Let's just go, we have a few more minutes, so let's go to Dave's question about how, and this is related also, how important is promotion marketing so that you have enough students ready and interested in taking these new courses that schools put so much planning and work into?
Jennifer, did you want to respond to that?
Go ahead, Carol. You can go first, and I'll respond after.
Okay. I think the promotion and marketing is very important, and it's necessary to perhaps meet with folks in student services and counseling to find out where the demand is among students, as well as finding out what's going on in your local labor market. Because if you can present to students employment potential, there will be interest. But the students aren't always as interested in what we think they're interested in. I've been involved in projects where we planned sort of like throwing a party and nobody showed up. So I would work carefully with surveying a number of different aspects of your institution to make sure that the demand is there. And then give students a very relevant outcome, such as an industry certificate or potential for job referral.
Thank you. Jennifer, anything to add to that?
That is so true, Carol. Yeah, no, I mean, we have found the same thing. It's really important not just to sort of build on the school strengths, which is what can happen a lot of times at schools, look and say, okay, what is it that we can offer? But it's really important to survey those students to see what kinds of careers and pathways they are interested in and where they align with what the school offers. And there's also somewhat of a financial barrier that can happen too. I know with the CNA program, it was originally funded by a grant, like I said, and that grant covered all of the costs for those for the IET students. Once that grant ended, enrollment definitely did drop. Surely it didn't drop because of student interest or jobs, since the medical industry is, one of the faster growing industries, at least in our area. So financial barriers can play a part, but also student interest. So promotion and marketing and knowing your population is a huge piece.
Thank you. And Karen is asking, how are the community colleges partnering with your schools? We'll start with Jennifer, since the other ones, you are a community college in a way. Are they referring students to your adult schools due to your CET offerings? Is it IET offerings?
Yeah, so those partnerships are really developing. I don't know that we have a large number of referrals from community colleges into our adult schools for our CTE program quite yet. We are partnered with the LA Community College District, which has, I want to say 11, but I could probably be wrong, community colleges that all operate sort of independently. So what we're trying to do is collaborate as large entities, but then also try and work with the individual adult school and community colleges at the local level too, so that they can begin referring students. But I wouldn't say that it's happening on a large scale yet, but we're working on it.
Thank you. Okay, that was a lot of information, and thank you very much. All three of you did a great job of presenting your programs and your results, and it's great to hear programs that have such great results. So thank you again. Thanks to all of you. If you know how to do your status, change your status at the top of your menu, the drop down next to the little person with his hand up, let's give them a round of applause for a great presentation. Thank you all. And we'll close the meeting right now, and please remember to do the evaluation. Thank you.